Welcome to Bible Connection, the podcast where we talk about the Bible and how it connects to every facet of life imaginable.
Hi, I'm Nikki Getman from Thomas Nelson Bibles, and today I'm talking with Lisa Whittle. She's an author, ministry leader, and the host of the Jesus Over Everything podcast. She's done master's work in marriage and family counseling and is a sought-after Bible teacher. Listen in as we discuss what it means to live with Jesus as the first priority in our lives.
You know, I know the Bible's true. I believe the Bible. I believe the creator of the system of order set things up. And the way he set it up is that he would be in first place and that everything then would fall from that priority order.
Lisa, I love the message of your podcast, Jesus Over Everything, because it really speaks to something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last few years, which is, where does idolatry show up in my life? Which would be really anything that I prioritize over God and over my relationship with Jesus. Where has that shown up for you? Where did you get inspired to really make this huge statement, which is really what Jesus Over Everything kind of is? It's a declaration of what is important to you. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's a banner that I really want to be over my life. I think it's a lifelong process for me. If I look back at my life, I don't think I thought at many places, oh, I want to put Jesus over everything with that language. But I think it's been a process of since the time I came to know Jesus when I was 6 years old, dying to myself and exalting him to his rightful spot, the number one place. I've said before, I don't know if I'm God's toughest case, but I'm definitely in his top 5. So things for me die hard, myself, the death to my own desires and wants and just doing what I want to do. And so for me, my life has been complicated by my own choices by so often. So I think, it sort of became this thing of like, how does life become simpler and how does life work? And, I know the Bible's true. I believe the Bible. I believe the creator of the system of order set things up. And the way he set it up is that he would be in first place and that everything then would fall from that priority order. And so it just really became apparent to me at this space in my life, after looking back at my life and after where I am now, this is the way life will work. And then it became just a desire to share that with other people, like, no, this is actually the way we uncomplicate our lives.
Wow, you don't really think about, it's not natural to think really that following Jesus is the way to uncomplicate your life. It seems like it could be just another thing to do or another rule to follow or another thing. What do you mean by uncomplicating your life?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's very fair. I think that is the mindset when we see the words Jesus over everything. It feels hard. It feels daunting. It can feel like a to-do. And that is one reason I wrote the book, is because I want us to be freed from that. And I want us to understand that God is so amazing that not only would he create us, but then he would care for us by saying, no, the reason why I want you to put me over everything is because I want your life to work well so that you can not only have a thriving life, not perfect, not problem-free, according to John 16:33, but less complicated than what it's become, right? And so because of that, this is the way it's set up. This is the way it'll work, according to Colossians 1:17, through 18. This is the way it's going to work. And so I want you to put me over everything because, by the way, I already am. I am over everything. And so this is the way your life will work. So I really want people to make that mind shift and understand that it is not this heady to do. That's why the things we talk about in the chapters are really daily choices and decisions that you're already making. You just might be making ones that don't support that lifestyle. And so putting language around that, and it's making a mind shift that I really wanted to do more than anything else by writing the book.
One of the things that you talk about is service over spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's kind of built into Christian ethic is, we've got to be in service.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can get stuck in what service looks like.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of lies about service that we can believe.
Mm-hmm.
And one is bigger is better. And the second is that God favors people in the spotlight. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
How did you kind of come to those two lies, or where did those show up for you?
Well, I think observation has taught me that. Also, lots of conversations with people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're all much more alike than what we think. We all kind of have the same conversations about this that surround this, and that I just picked up on that. So I just listen and ask questions, and I found that those two things get in our way a lot when it comes to service. Bigger is better. So we think, whatever is seen, whatever is notable, whatever is glossy, whatever has a lot of numbers attached to it, that is what we need to be doing. And so I think we get off track with that because we are using the litmus test of man. And I mean, it's no wonder we live in the world, right? So we're kind of looking at the way man judges service, spotlight, all of those things. And then also, I think there is this idea that God favors people in the spotlight, whether it be that he chose certain people, right? Or whether that because they're there, then, they're his favorites. However we want to see that, we know that throughout the Bible, I'm thinking of the Acts passage, Acts 3 and 4, where it talks about Peter and John, and they were ordinary men with no special training. I think about that, and yet the amazing things that happened there with the healing of this crippled man, and I'm reminded of that over and over again. It's not about big, flashy. It is about the heart that God can use, and so. I think it's real important. And I don't want people to get caught up on the word spotlight either, because I know that there are some introverts that might hear that and think, I don't want to be in the spotlight. Like, I don't have any desire for a actual spotlight to be on me. But we all have this sort of desire to be noticed, valued. It's not that, the worth conversation, obviously, for all of us as humans, that's okay. We all want to have value. It's just, where do we find our value? And I also don't want us to look
appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And I don't want us to look at service as we have to be mopping floors. God can use any and every one of us in lots of capacities. And it might be that God has given someone gifts that will be noticed by more people. The point is, where's your heart? What are you doing? And what are you doing it for? And it's a private matter between you and the Lord that you have to work out.
Yeah, one of the other things you talk about in the myths area around this idea of service is that service feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And so often service doesn't feel good, whether you're in the spotlight doing your service or you're in the mopping the floors part of doing your service. There's part of it that if we're crucified to Christ, there's living in that example. Actually, you can almost expect that there's going to be a painful component to that, in that process of dying to self, but also dying to the situation that you're in.
Yeah. I think that as humans, we are always looking for the payoff. That is a thread of humanity that we all share. I also think that, it is one of those things where, I talk about in the beginning of the chapter, I share a story about a woman named Debbie, and the Lord asked her to clean this bathroom, and it's quite a poignant story in the beginning of that chapter. I think that what we don't realize about service is that the payoff that we're looking for is not the payoff that we typically find. There is a payoff to service, but it's not done with that intention in mind. It's the thing that naturally happens when your heart is aligned to God and you serve, right, with the heart of God. Because when Jesus walked the face of the earth, service was who he was. Like, it was a part of his character. And he came to serve. I mean, that's the whole point. And what happens is when we serve, it innately changes who we are as people. All those things that we have wanted for so long to become maybe more humble, more open, more loving, more like Christ, the things that we as Christians say, oh, I just want to be more like Christ. So let me buy another book to read about it or whatever, and obviously I'm not against books since I've written them.
Right.
But there's something that happens when we serve. It just changes who we are. And I've said before that one of the greatest ways to get our credibility back as believers in this day and time, which we are desperate to do, and we so need to do in order to be able to influence this world, is by serving. That is how one of the major ways we will get our credibility back as believers.
Where has service been painful for you?
Oh man, service does not ever come easy for me. It is not a gift that I have. I have had to pray about serving so many times. It is not my natural inclination. I don't walk into a room and think, how can I serve? That is not something that comes natural for me. So I think it's been painful for me because there have been times that in my own self, I've thought, if I serve, will I be used? Will I be taken advantage of? I've been in the church my whole life. My father was a pastor. I've watched people who have served, and it hasn't always yielded, beautiful support and all the things that you really want out of it. But I know that as the Lord has called me into a deeper relationship with him, I know that serving has changed me, going against the grain of who I am, innately who I am, of myself, of my flesh. It's changed me more than almost anything else. So the pain's been worth it. I've served overseas. I've served in Honduras. I've served in other countries. Sometimes I haven't really thought about that necessarily as service, just because God's asked me to do something. I've been obedient. I've done it. There's been lots of times that there have been harder yeses, maybe to serve places closer to home, that I think it's hard for all of us, maybe to serve our family, maybe to serve the church where maybe you've been hurt before, or, just places that are more difficult. It's always harder to serve a neighbor. It's always harder to serve a family member. So I think service takes on a lot of different faces. And the point is really, where's the heart and your yes.
And I think that's where you were headed with the Peter and John story, because certainly training is a good thing.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yes, I mean,
trained leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's that heart response combined to a sovereign and limitless God.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in training. I went to Bible college. I've been to seminary. I have training now that I do for other leaders who are creatives, writing and speaking. And I'm not anti-training. I just don't want us to get hung up on training. And I believe that it is a powerful combination when we press forward in our gifts and say, let me be responsible. Because I feel very compelled by being responsible with the gifts God has given us. So I'm very compelled by that. I also don't want us to get so in our head about it that we think, oh, I must be trained in order to share the gospel with someone who lives next door to me. Right. That's where we get really tripped up. And so I think there's an important distinction there.
That's where we can let fear and not being enough get in our way of moving forward into obedience to what God has called us to be.
Absolutely.
Because I just need one more thing. I just
Right.
need one more qualification.
Right.
I just need one more,
I read my Bible regularly, but there were times when it felt like I was just reading words on a page. Like I wasn't really hearing from God the way some people talk about. And I wanted more than that. I wanted to do more than just read the Bible. I wanted to experience God's love through His Word. But I needed help.
Help to hear from God and see His love for me. To better understand God's character and actions. To study the Bible in a way that helped me see the truth more clearly. And when that happened, I started to feel like I was actually hearing from God in the Word. And not just to know what He wants me to do in light of Scripture, but that He loves me. And that love isn't just about me.
It's a love that connects me to women like me.
And women different from me.
Women who are trying to live faithfully in our situations.
Women who want to understand the Bible and hear from God through it. Women who all want the same thing.
To love God with our whole lives. Dig deep into God's Word and know His love for you with the Love God Greatly Bible. Get your copy at lovegodgreatlybible.com today.
You talk about holiness over freedom. What does that mean to you?
Well, that chapter means a lot. It was the chapter I least wanted to write. It was the last chapter I put in the book. And there's a lot of things in it that I did not want to write about. But it is one of the most important things I write about, because if we could understand the concept of this, it could set a lot of people free in a new way. The interesting thing about freedom is that we actually, one of the greatest things that the Lord has done for us is He's given us this ability to have free will. And yet in that freedom, we are actually becoming enslaved by the choices we are free to make. Just think about this for a minute. So we have a lot of believers who are enslaved by our own choices. And it is not the free, thriving life that God has created us to have. Instead, the choice for holiness, which really is emulating the entire character of Christ, who He is, and all of that, it produces the kind of freedom that allows us to truly thrive in this life. And that is the greatest irony about this idea of holiness over freedom. And I so desperately want us to understand that the choice for holiness is not a choice about, well, I'm going to have all these rules, right? It really is about spiritual relinquishment in order to have the abundant life that God has promised.
Right. We can also get tripped up thinking, well, I don't want to just follow the rules. I don't want to be a legalist.
Right.
I believe in the grace of Christ and that it covers me. And yet we're still called to obedience.
Right.
And you talk a lot actually about Abraham and the step-by-step choices of obedience, where ultimately he put his son on an altar because that's what God called him to. And that we have this calling to emulate Christ.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of legalism. It's clearly not the way to go. It's clearly not biblical.
Right.
And I think, we think that automatically we think, oh, well, if I'm gonna choose holiness, I'm getting real close to legalism, and it's actually not true at all. And in the chapter, I talk about freedom from and freedom of, the importance there. I think there's a huge distinction there that needs to be made, and that we make in the chapter. And so freedom of, freedom from, and the understanding there. And And I pray that no one will read that chapter and walk away feeling like it's about legalism at all, because it's really not. But it is just hugely important that we understand what the whole thing is about, because it really will create the freedom that we want.
And ultimately, the connection you make is it uncomplicates our lives.
It uncomplicates our lives. Yes, because if anyone has ever been enslaved by their own choices, right? So it's a freedom that we're allowed. It's not illegal. It's maybe not even against the word, but it's something maybe the Lord has convicted us of personally that we know has maybe come between us and the Lord, right? If any of us have ever lived with a choice that we've made and we have thereby become feeling like we're owned by it, we know how complicated that has made our life. And so it's really just a question of look at your own life. Like, don't take my word for it. Look at your own life and see where it's gotten complicated. Is it by a freedom that you've actually chosen for yourself that has in turn enslaved you and complicated your life? And if that is the case, then do you want something different? And do you want something more? For me, I'll be honest with you, I don't like people bossing me around. Can I say that?
You can't,
That's
because you
just
have
the
a
way I
very
roll.
sympathetic ear right here. Yeah, for sure.
I told you I'm one of God's toughest cases. I don't. I mean, I'm very independent. I really I don't necessarily love rules. So I mean, this chapter for me, it like speaks to my own rebellious heart, you know. But I tell you, I don't feel in any way hindered by following Jesus and by being under the protection of holiness. I feel more free than I ever have in my entire life. And I think that's the beauty of being able to take someone even as stubborn as me and living in such the freedom of holiness, because it really, really is. And I don't like, on the other hand, feeling like I am controlled or bossed or owned by something that I don't trust in this world that even I've chosen. Like, I don't want that. I don't want anything to own me. And it's really one of the reasons why it was the catalyst for my shopping fast, because I did not want to be owned by the need, or what I thought was the need, to shop as a means to cope. And I felt almost angry that that would be something that Satan would use against me, to feel like I couldn't have the full thriving, free life that I wanted. And so holiness doesn't do that.
Yeah, you have a great quote that from the beginning of the book that I loved. It's God's protection is often in asking us to cut out good things we don't see silently causing damage. And this kind of comes back to that whole idolatry thing for me. It's what are those things that are causing damage that I don't see, or that I'm letting rise above what God has called me to, and putting Him first? They're not necessarily bad things. It can be my cell phone. It could be binging out on Netflix, to kind of peace out over the weekend after a busy week. It could be whatever those things are that we use to numb and to cope with life when Jesus is calling us to rest in Him.
Right. And so I can hear people saying, like, don't take away my Netflix.
Right. No, yeah.
And here's the reality of it. It's like, we have choice. We can still have our Netflix show, but here's the point. Eventually, the Netflix show won't be enough. Like, it just won't be enough,
Right.
And so the point is, do you want your life to be ultimately sort of uncomplicated in the day-to-day? Do you want to keep running to the substitute saviors that won't help you in the end?
Right.
Or do you want a better solution than that? I mean, by the way that we grasp at solutions, but we turn and settle for non-solutions, it just shows me that we are on a constant chase and we are constantly hungry for something more than we have thus far found. And, I just think about the trends. I think about, hey, let's Marie Kondo our closet. Look, it's great. I love it. I mean, we're going to walk into our closet for at least a month and love it and feel joy that we've thrown out what doesn't bring us joy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if anybody's ever done that, that the minute you walk out of that closet and you're living your real life and you're doing your real thing and you're driving to Starbucks and you're going through your day and you get the email or the phone call or the text word, that the closet cleaning is not enough.
Right.
It's not enough.
Right.
And so the compelling, hopeful, prayerful ask then of us is, have you turned to your heart and looked inside at what you've bought that doesn't bring you joy in here?
Right.
Because that's what's complicating you, not your closet.
Right.
It might make you better a little bit if you clean out your closet. I mean, certainly let's do it. Or your calendar, streamlining it. Yeah, that's great. If you want to do it, you're probably going to be on time to more things or whatever. But boxes and dates do not cure hearts. They just don't.
That's great. This is the Bible Connection podcast. So we always ask, what's the Bible speaking to you? What's God speaking to you through the Bible today? What's fresh and new to you today?
Oh gosh. Today, I think the thing that I am, he's had me in this for a while. This has been sort of my year, I think. I've been studying the book of Nahum, actually.
It's a big book.
It's a small book that's big. It's a small book that's big. Yes, it is. It's very, meaty. But he's been uncovering a lot of things for me. And I think the one thing that I have continued to be reminded of this year is just that God knows. He knows in ways that we don't know. And he is working things on our behalf that we cannot possibly see, that we cannot possibly know. We know this in our brains intellectually, but on a deep core level, he has been showing me, I know, Lisa, I see, I know, and I have this. And it's just been pulling me into a lot of deeper trust, which for me doesn't come easy.
Mm-hmm.
I've journeyed long, and trust issues are not always are a part of sort of my life and my journey. I've talked about that very openly. So even trusting Jesus sometimes is hard for me, if I'm being completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to remember every day, God knows. He knows in a way that I don't know. It is not a human understanding, and it involves lots of layers of action and sovereignty and deep stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have a life verse?
Well, I think I don't really have a life verse. I think there's a verse that continually compels me. It's Psalm 142:5. It says, "O Lord, you are my refuge. You are all I really want in this life." I think that verse, especially in my adulthood, has marked me in a very major way because wanting God has been the game changer of my life. I think every decision flows from there. So I would say Psalm 142:5 has been a compeller for me for some years.
So we want the Lord to be our everything. Why is it so hard, do you think?
Because we're human. I mean, it's tough. We want him, but we also want ourselves. I talk about this in the beginning of the book. I have loved Jesus desperately since I was 6 years old, but I have also loved me, and it's been the entire rub of my life. The good news is that it is possible to have this priority order right. It is, because there's nothing that the Lord would ask us to do that he wouldn't then empower us to do. There's nothing, because that would contradict himself, and he cannot do that. So the beautiful news is that if we have this desire, and really if we pray about it and we take steps to doing it, I do believe that this priority order can happen in our life, And it's going to be daily choices, but I do believe it's possible.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us about Jesus over everything.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.